Hey there, everybody. I'm so glad to be with you, courageous creative conquerors. And today we have Stephanie Duesing, and she's going to share with us her idea of creativity. She's had a very interesting life, and she's very highly creative in many different ways, and also her son. And so I'm going to ask her questions about being creative and also find out what she's been through and how she and her son have overcome and conquered obstacles in their life through creativity. So, Stephanie, could you share with me your unique definition of creativity?
Well, first of all, I wanted to say thank you very much for having me here today. I feel so blessed to have this privilege to talk with you and to talk about creativity. I really believe that creativity is the ability to see the unseen. It's the ability to think of things that other people perhaps haven't thought of, to look at the world maybe upside down and backwards and inside out and see what perhaps everybody else is missing. And that to me is creativity, to see what is goes unnoticed sometimes. And sometimes it's the beauty of things that are unnoticed, and sometimes it's the things that aren't beautiful but that need fixing. And either way, to be able to see it first, you have to see it first to recognize it before you can then take action.
I
That's
love that definition. That's very good. So, what would you say to somebody who's out there and is feeling highly creative, but maybe they were criticized for their creativity? Maybe they'll do things a little bit differently. Maybe they feel frightened. Maybe they have stage fright. They might be a performing artist. And I know you know that because you're a musician, you have a history of music. What would you say to them to help them take that step into releasing that creativity?
I would say that every type of creativity can be learned. Creativity is a learned skill. Singing is a learned skill, just like playing basketball, and pretty much anyone can learn it. You just have to get a good teacher and do it. And it's the same with art. I have artist friends, and my son is an artist, and they say draw every day. That's how you learn to draw. If you're one to sing, sing every day. That's how you learn to sing. It's a learned skill, and I would say don't let others' judgment hold you back. People are often afraid of doing things that are maybe different of what everyone else around them is doing. And that's sad because you're losing a whole lot of joy in your life if you aren't allowing yourself to be a creator. Humans have always been creative in the arts, both the visual arts and the oral arts, and I mean the dance arts, all that. And it's a part of us, it's a need. And to feel like you have to stifle that part is like killing part of your soul. So I would say just do it.
Just do it. Okay. Very good. I love that. And so tell me about Stephanie as a child and what did you overcome? How are you a courageous, creative conqueror? How did you use the arts to overcome challenges as a child and young adult growing up?
Well, I am a survivor of life threatening child abuse. My mom was severely mentally ill, and she was emotionally and sometimes physically abusive and verbally abusive. And really, she actually endangered my life on multiple occasions. I was repeatedly abandoned as a child, beginning when I was 4, deliberately. And so I have overcome quite a lot. And I think for sure that music was the thing that brought me a lot of joy and comfort. And the surprising thing was is that one of the very few things my mom was able to do appropriately was to share music with us as a child. My mom actually had no musical training, but she loved to sing, and she shared that with me as a child. And so, she was not, no one is all bad. And my mom also was not all bad, and she shared her love of music with me, and that to be able to sing, and I just sang all the time growing up. And when I was in middle school, I joined my first choir, and that was it. That was it for me. Just that's where I found my people, that's where I found my friends, that's where I found a sense of purpose and joy and safety. And yeah, it was just a wonderful thing for me.
And you eventually, did you become a music teacher?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, I taught middle school general music and chorus for 10 years
Mhm.
before I had my son. And then I took some time off after he was born. And then my focus turned to early childhood music education. I started teaching the kindergarten, and then it became the K through 2 choir at my church. And I became a certified music garden instructor, which is a beautiful music and movement program for birth, I think, all the way up to age 10. And I ran my own studio out of my home. I had taught about 7 classes of, I had babies, toddlers, and preschool age classes running, and I absolutely loved it.
Okay. And you talk about in your book, The Eyeless Mind, you talk a little bit about your life growing up with your mother and also very much about your son. I want to move on to that a little bit. And you mentioned that he's an artist and he has a very unusual challenge with sight, being blind. And could you just briefly share that? And I want to share also his artwork
Well, thank
with
you.
us. Yeah.
Well, first I want to address my son has something called Cerebral/Cortical visual impairment, or CVI, and it's a brain-based vision impairment that's entirely separate from, although it can happen together with, ocular blindness. So in my son's case, his eye and his optic nerve are perfectly healthy, but he did suffer brain damage when I almost died giving birth to him. I coded from my epidural and my blood pressure dropped to 40/26, and I got the 6-inch needle of epinephrine in my heart and almost died. And apparently there was no fetal distress, and I gave birth to him the regular way. And we were told I had a perfectly healthy baby. And we brought him home from the hospital thinking he was perfectly healthy. And if it's okay, I'll share a picture.
Let's take a look at the picture. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. When he was born,
Mhm.
we're told that he was perfectly healthy.
And then, so this is him in the hospital. And we were told he was perfectly healthy and that there was nothing wrong with him. And my son had all normal developmental milestones and took the training wheels off his bike when he was 4. One of the things they often tell people who, parents of children who have CVI, is that children who have CVI don't make eye contact. And we have got photo after photo of my son making regular and consistent eye contact from his earliest days. And so we literally had no idea that there was anything wrong with my son because he appeared to be typically sighted. And one of
What
the
a
things,
beautiful baby boy you've got there. Yeah.
thank you. And I mean, there was just no way of knowing from looking. And what doctors are learning more and more now, especially with our bringing our case forward, is that you can have very severe neurological visual impairments and still appear to be typically sighted, and that it's actually common for people like my son to go for years on and misdiagnosed. They're often just told that they have autism, or they're told they have behavior disorders, when in fact what they actually have is a vision impairment. And it can be very severe, and they can look like they're perfectly typically sighted, and yet my son is actually almost completely blind.
Yes.
And another thing that's often said is that children who have CVI can't use or struggle to use visual guidance of reach. We have photos of my son using visual guidance of reach, is where you look and then you grab. And you can see here, this is my son using visual guidance of reach at a developmentally appropriate age, and he's almost completely blind. And so we had just no idea that there was anything wrong with him. He became a straight A honor student. He took the training wheels off his bike when he was 4. He skipped a grade. He was a straight A honor student. He was on the water polo team. We
Uh-huh.
just didn't have any idea there was anything wrong until he was 15 years old. And then we were going through old photos.
So can you show us some of his artwork?
Yes, I would be happy to.
Yes.
So my son actually taught himself to see using art, and he began from the time he was very, very small. And I can't find the original picture of his first bird, but I found this one of his second bird painting. This was from back in 2004 when he was, I think he was about 3, 2.5, 3. And this is a bird that he painted, my blind son, as a toddler. And you can see the head and then there's a body, and there's a wing with feathers coming up over here, and then feathers coming down. And I have to find the other bird picture because it's actually even better. I'm not sure what happened to it. But my blind son just painted all the time, and he learned to identify the characteristics of different objects and people by painting. And you
Can
can
you
see
show
here.
the one with the Winnie the Pooh?
Oh, yes, let me show
Yes.
you this one. And he told me that this was a picture of a baby wearing a Winnie the Pooh Bear costume. It was at Halloween. And you'll notice the time this was painted in November 16th in 2004. So it was a Halloween costume that he remembered, that he saw when he was out trick-or-treating with his very, very limited sight that he had. And then he reproduced what he remembered here.
And you, I would imagine, were very encouraging of his art,
Oh,
encouraging him to do that.
he had a lot of time painting.
Yes. And
Yes.
also music as well. Is that correct? You were encouraging him with art and music.
Well, I am an early childhood music and movement specialist, and so
Yes.
Sebastian really, he did get a lot of music.
Can you explain? We chatted before a couple of weeks ago, and you were telling me the importance of music. And I know that I'm a registered music therapist and an advocate for that as well. You were telling me the importance of music for those with neuro vision problems. Is that correct, or just for everyone?
It's
And
important
but
for
in
everyone.
particular, how much it helped your son?
Yes, my son has something called blind sight, and blind sight is an unconscious ability to detect motion that is separate from the ability to detect light or color or anything else. And he has such a well-developed sense of blind sight that he actually can move through the environment completely blind without bumping into things. And so he can walk down the street, he can walk through our house. He has all his life, just like a typically sighted person can. And it's my belief that he has that well-developed sense of coordination and the unconscious perception of what blind sight actually is, because he experienced a great deal of music and movement from birth on. And there is just more than 20 years of research demonstrating that music and movement in early childhood have tremendous neurological benefits. And part of that is because music is the only activity known that activates the movement, the visual, and the auditory cortices of the brain at the same time.
Yes. So I'd like to just show some of his illustrations later as a young adult.
Mhm. So Sebastian actually had three artworks on exhibit at the Albert Kemper Museum at the age
Incredible.
of
Yeah.
17. And he has something called prosopagnosia, which is an inability to recognize faces, which is one of the symptoms of CVI. It's actually a common symptom of CVI. And this is a no, this is actually a colored pencil portrait that he did of a friend of his. And he did that when he was in high school. And here is a painting. I think this is an oil painting that he did. This was on exhibit at the Albert Kemper Museum, as well as this. Sebastian does not actually prefer to draw in photographic realism and paint. He likes to do all kinds of things, but he has a lot of ability. And I think this is one of my very favorites that he did. This is a watercolor and not a photograph. And actually,
Incredible. Yes.
he's almost completely blind. I don't have time here today in this short interview to talk about all of his visual
Yes.
symptoms, but he has almost no functional vision.
Well, let's go back to the screen, looking at one another.
Yes, here, I'll
I
stop
want to
share.
ask you a few more questions about you. You're my guest here. I mean, he's incredible. And this book is just really, really amazing. And what you did in discovering his blindness and what the way that he perceives things was really something that awakened a lot of doctors. I know you had to work very hard with the incorrect medical diagnoses and a lot of struggle. That's all in here. I wanted to ask you, though, just a personal question
Yeah.
about you as a mother. And how did that affect you emotionally going through all this and having doctors tell you, no, 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 you know,
Well,
and
first,
misdiagnosis here and there and not believing you and
well, thank you for asking that because it was just horrible. It was the experience we went through. So first I wanted to say, part of the reason we had such a difficult time is because my son is the only person in the world known to process his vision verbally. And we made that discovery at home, which, I mean, it means he literally sees with words like a bat sees with sound. And so I actually had cataract surgery recently, but I used to wear glasses and my characteristics were tall blonde glasses. And when my son thought those words to himself, he would actually literally get an image of what I look like. And he spent 6 hours in the fMRI for the Harvard CVI neuroplasticity research study, where they captured that in the fMRI. So it's proven, and they're actually writing papers on him now as we speak. So he will be,
yay!
yes, they're creating.
Yeah.
Dr. Barry Cran at the Perkins School for the Blind and Dr. Lotfi Marabet, who's the director of the Harvard CVI neuroplasticity research study, are writing a paper on him now. And he will be a case study for the, I forget, is it the American College of Optometry? I might not be right about that. I can't remember for sure, but they're creating a case study on him so that ophthalmology students will learn about my son and other people who have CVI.
So the question was,
Yeah.
how did that make you feel?
Mm-hmm.
Because I believe that you are a courageous creative conqueror,
Thank you.
thinking out of the box creatively to figure this out, and
Mhm.
also using the creative arts with him in many different ways. You know, you are a courageous, very courageous mother, creative
Thank you
conqueror.
so
So, how
much.
did that make you feel working with these doctors that just are not
Mhm. Well,
supporting
I wanted
you?
to give that background because when you say, well, I think my son is, seeing with words, I mean, that sounds crazy, right? So there's
Yeah.
didn't actually say that very often, but we did say he was compensating verbally for his vision impairment. And even with direct evidence in the form of a full neuropsych evaluation, we just couldn't get anyone to believe us, even though we had evidence, actually hard evidence of what we were saying in his neuropsych evaluation. And it was devastating to my son and to myself
Yes.
because we were treated like we were completely crazy. And,
I understand that
and
personally.
yes, yeah, I
Yeah.
know you do. And
Yes.
it's devastating to think that you are, a person of standing in the community. You have a job and you're respected and liked by people, and you have friends and family, and then you go to the doctor and to be treated like you're a complete lunatic. And I felt like we were treated almost like we were dangerous. Like
You
my son
know,
doesn't need surgery, he doesn't need medications, and yet we were treated like we were, asking for narcotics, when in reality all he needed was some orientation and mobility training with a white cane, to
yes.
help him get around. That's all he needed. So I gained more than 100 pounds in stress fat. So that's the answer to your question.
Do you
It
feel less stressed now?
um Sort of.
Are you living in
Honestly,
joy now?
I
Yeah.
honestly don't think that I have recovered. It was so devastating to our family. First, the discovery. Imagine discovering your 15-year-old is blind and no one knew. And then to have absolutely no one in the medical profession believe you and actually abuse you. We were abused. I mean, you read the book. We were
Yes, yes.
emotionally and verbally abused, and it was horrific. And so I know my son has not recovered yet, and I honestly don't think that I've recovered. And you would think, that I could wish I could just say, "Oh, I wrote this book and I'm all healed now and I'm done," but it devastated us as
It,
a family.
yeah, it affects you for a lifetime, the emotional trauma of that. And, but, I also, I don't know if you'd reached this point yet, but coming out of it for me, being
Mhm.
misdiagnosed for 40 years and being laughed at I I also now am at a point where I kind of understand the doctors, the frustration that they have. They have these certain codes,
Right.
and all the codes aren't there, and they have to check a code off, even
Right.
though they can't figure out what's wrong with you. They don't have all the equipment or they don't have the knowledge. They have to mark something off in order to get paid.
Yeah, and it's
And
crazy.
it's just the way that this system works, which is failing us, failing people. And so they mark something off. And so it ends up your son has all these different diagnoses that don't work, and they're marking this and that. Is that kind of what your journey was?
Well, the only clue that we ever had there was anything wrong with my son was what appeared to be mild anxiety.
Which of course he had, because they couldn't express what was going on. And
It's common. And so, I mean, it's the fact that there's no diagnostic code for it is just unconscionable, because we have tens of thousands of people here in the US who have it, tens of thousands of them. And they're all going through the same struggles we did to get diagnoses and educational services and habilitative services. And I feel like it's my job, to try to change that, to try to just bring awareness.
well, applause to you for all that you've done to support your wonderful child, and to discover this working with the doctors, and to keep courageously going on, even though they were saying no, 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 they weren't believing you. Applause to you, and thank you so much for being here. And before we end, I just want to ask you again to address our other courageous conquerors out there that have this creativity within them, and maybe they're afraid, maybe they've been told, you know,
I hear all the time.
you can't do this, or I don't believe in you, or this or that. It's being a creative person, I think, is not always easy, because it's an out of a box. And certainly your son has had out of the box journey in life, and so have you. You're out of the box. And anybody, any artist, dancer, theater, musician, any of those, photographer, any of those, they're looking at things out of the box. And your son, I love the title, Eyeless Mind. Eyeless Mind is looking at things in a different way. So what words of encouragement can you think to share with some of our people out here who are afraid to take that step?
I would just say, if you have something that you are longing to do, pick it up and do it. There's no time like today. And the more you start now, the better you will be 10 years from now. But if you wait 10 years to start it, then you're still starting from the beginning either way. So you may as well start now.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. You certainly are a creative person. You're a writer, you're a musician, and your son is an artist, and you're a speaker, and just such a joy to have you here. How can people find out more about you? What's your website, and how can they reach you and find out more?
My name is Stephanie Duesing, and the last name is D as in David, Uesing, as in I'm a music teacher and I do sing. And my book is Eyeless Mind. And if you Google my name, or if you Google Eyeless Mind, it will take you to my website, and you can contact me through there if you would like to, if you have questions about CVI, or if there's any way I can help you, I will connect you to the people who can. There's a lot of resources for families who have CVI now, especially through the Perkins School for the Blind. There's just wonderful groups that can help you get connected and help you get a diagnosis for your child.
Thank you. This has been so much fun.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye.